And not only that, even if he, pulled out a bag of cash, a briefcase full of cash, they treated him with the kind of disdain as like, your kind doesn't belong in here. I swear this story feels like one of those Dar Man videos online. Y'all know the ones I'm talking about. Now, he could have easily spent the money and bought whatever he wanted in this place, whatever he wanted. And I'm talking about six-figure purchase. However, why give money to people who clearly did not want his business? Hello, Governor. This is Rick Highsteed, new from the Ville. Welcome back. I'm talking about a topic that requires immense courage. Restraint. We've all been in a moment where we felt that powerful surge of rage or anger, and we had that urge to lash out, to retaliate, to fight back with every fiber of our being. But what if the most heroic, the most powerful action that you can take isn't to strike, but to hold back? What if true strength lies in finding the courage to restrain yourself in a critical moment for a greater, more profound good? Today I'm taking a media therapy deep dive into Doctor Who, Season 11, Episode 3, Rosa. In this powerful and poignant episode, the Doctor and her companions are thrust into 1955 Alabama, where they are forced to witness historical injustice firsthand. Their natural instinct is to intervene, but the episode's central dilemma is a masterclass in strategic restraint. I'll explore why the Doctor's most difficult choices aren't about what to do, but what not to do, and what this teaches us about emotional regulation, nonviolent resistance, and the monumental world-changing impact of a controlled response. Get ready to rethink the meaning of power, find strength in self-control, and discover the quiet courage of restraint. Let me tell you a little story. Now, my mama used to tell me, call it out, say its name, and shame the devil. But I'm not going to do that. I had a friend who was looking to pick up something new. And I'm not going to name the business, only because I don't want them kind of problems. I don't want them to come after me. Even though everything I'm about to say is true and I can prove it, it's just a hassle. So I'm not going to name the business. However, people in my region, people in my area would know exactly who I'm talking about. He went into the business to buy something new, and he was profiled from the minute he got in there. Now, this is not that kind of, I think I'm being treated poorly, or these are microaggressions. No, they were not subtle. They were overt. And they called security on him. They acted as if he did not belong in this place. He didn't have the money to be here. And not only that, even if he, pulled out a bag of cash, a briefcase full of cash, they treated him with the kind of disdain as like, your kind doesn't belong in here. I swear this story feels like one of those Dar Man videos online. Y'all know the ones I'm talking about. Now, he could have easily spent the money and bought whatever he wanted in this place, whatever he wanted. And I'm talking about six-figure purchase. However, why give money to people who clearly did not want his business? Well, it just so happened that this business was looking to expand in our region. And they went to I don't know if it was a local bank or something. They were doing something. But just so happened that this particular gentleman sat on the board of directors of this bank, I think it was. And when they came to present their case to get an infusion of cash or what have you, it was presented to the board, and after a few moments, the realization set in of, why does that dude look familiar? Now, they tried to downplay him like he was not important and that the other members of the board would back their play, what they wanted to do. However, they didn't know that he was one of the presiding presidents or something like that of this particular board. He had a lot of sway and a lot of influence based on who he was. Needless to say, they didn't get that cash infusion that they wanted. And from what I understand, they're no longer in business, or they moved to a different area or something like that. Because once the word got out about their practices, many of the other establishments didn't see them as a good bet, I guess. And it sounds a whole lot like a Dar man. And really in this day and age, you'd be like, things don't work like that. It's about the bottom line. If they made dollars, then it would have made sense. But sometimes, just sometimes, things happen as they are supposed to happen. Now, he could have 100% turned all angry black man when he was trying to buy what he was trying to buy in their establishment, but he showed restraint. And sometimes a little can go a long way. Let's get into it. Hello, Governor. This is Rakai Steve New from the Ville, and I'm here to talk about Doctor Who, Season 11, Episode 3, Rosa. Now, if you've been rocking with me for a while, then you know how I do this. I gave you the intro, I gave you a short story. Now I'm gonna kind of, welcome you in, and let's talk about this. Now, I usually do a long recap. I'm not doing that anymore. So this is new, fairly new, but not doing that anymore. Now, if you want to see what this media therapy deep dive is based on, go into the description and look at the what it says based on this analysis, and that was a reaction between myself and Centel. So check that out after this video, of course. But I'm gonna give you a quote or two that I find particularly poignant and fitting to this, and my personal thoughts, and then we're out of here. Now, you know that I love my quotes, so let's go ahead and get into that. The first quote is from Mahatma Gandhi, and he says, "When restraint and courtesy are added to strength, the latter becomes irresistible." The second quote is from Simon Sinek, and he says, "Self-confidence is the ability to exercise restraint in the face of disrespect and still show respect in response." The name of this media therapy deep dive is Restraint. Now, you may not know this, or you may not feel this, but restraint is not a passive or a weak response. I was talking about one of the deep dives that I did for an episode of The Bear, and a lot of times people mistake kindness for weakness, and that is a mistake. Restraint can be powerful, active, and a profoundly courageous choice to suppress your immediate impulses in the face of injustice for a greater or more strategic good. Now, this particular episode is called Rosa, and you may ask, why is it called Rosa? And I'm assuming that if you're here watching Deep Dive, then you've already seen the episode. So you know that it actually deals with the Doctor and the companions meeting Rosa Parks in 1955, Alabama. This episode is a masterclass, demonstrating how finding the strength to hold back one's anger, technology, or modern sensibilities is the most heroic action of all, and the very thing that sets world-changing progress in motion. Now, we know that the Doctor is a time-traveling alien, and her natural, this time it's a her, but its natural instinct is to fix things. The TARDIS doesn't help. The TARDIS sends the Doctor. The Doctor knows that she's not really steering the TARDIS. She might try to point in a direction and say, I want to go here. But most times the TARDIS is like, yeah, but you need to go here, and that's where I'm going to send you. However, the Doctor also knows that certain things in time, especially you fooling with time, certain things are fixed points, and they have to happen. If not, you could break the timeline and maybe cause an action that will erase you from existence. It's all, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. But the doctor has to find the courage to restrain herself from directly intervening, which, have you met the doctor? That is extremely hard for her. But of course, like any other historical moment, it's not going to be easy. The doctor's strength lies in recognizing that a quick fix would erase the monumental importance of Rosa's own agency and the sacrifice that she makes to impact history. You have to remember that when someone is doing something that's for history, hardly ever do they think about it. They don't know that they're making history. Very few times when they do something, they're doing that act out of maybe sheer happenstance, coincidence, accidental, or understanding that this particular sacrifice will change things. A lot of times, though, they have no idea the impact of that change and what it will mean not only to that woman, that community, the nation, the world as a whole. And in this particular episode, we find out that not only the world, but the galaxy, that the decision that Rosa Parks makes on this day, and I'm assuming also Martin Luther King, who is briefly cameoed in the episode, makes a decision to fight injustice and do what's right that impacts the entire intergalactic union, federation of planets, or what have you. I don't know. Now, a couple things also that we have to notice besides just the doctor's restraint is Ryan and Graham's restraint. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Ryan, he's a 19-year-old knucklehead, and he's experiencing his own trauma. Like, he's still in the midst of actual grief and trauma. And it's hard to deal with some other very heavy topics when you haven't dealt with what's already weighing you down. Now, Ryan and Graham, because say what you want, even though he married Ryan's grandmother, Graham considers himself Ryan's grandfather, which in 1955 Alabama, that's wild, because Ryan is most definitely a black man and Graham is most definitely a Caucasian man. Alabama ain't ready for that. But they witnessed overt and painful racism firsthand. Now, their initial and visceral reaction is one of righteous anger, and they have a strong urge to fight back. And it's actually Rosa who comes to Ryan's aid and has to save him from the consequences of his actions. He's a little bit of a hothead. He doesn't think forward. In the saying that, someone is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, Ryan is most definitely playing checkers and losing. So in this episode, not only Ryan, but Graham as well, have to learn to restrain their voices and their actions. And they have to swallow this fury that they have building inside them to ensure that they don't jeopardize the very fragile timeline or draw attention that would jeopardize the bus driver's role in the historical act that is to come. The bus driver has a crucial act of prejudice that sets everything in motion. It is a catalyst for the civil rights movement as we know it. Now, you cannot talk about this episode without talking about the namesake of the episode, and that is Rosa Parks herself. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds and give you a history lesson. And I did say a little bit of that in the reaction, so make sure you go check out the reaction as well. But the central lesson of this episode is embodied in Rosa Parks herself. Now, a little history. Rosa Parks was not the first one to sit down and refuse to get up. She wasn't. But the other people, and you guys know how the court of public opinion works, the other people that were chosen always had some blemish on a record that allowed very smooth talking people, usually lawyers or police, to turn public opinion against them. Even though it had nothing to do, and that's still prevalent to this day, even though it had nothing to do with the action at hand, they talk about when you got caught shoplifting gum when you were 7 years old, to talk about what an old lady is doing in the face of injustice. Think about Rosa Parks, though. She was happily married, and there were no problems. There were no skeletons in the closet, if you will. She was the perfect candidate to give up her freedom, to sacrifice her freedoms at the hands of injustice for the greater good. It was a strategic move. And if you see in the episode, and of course it's hard to see because it's all a reenactment, a telling of what people think that happened, and some of it going by the historical records of people who were there, their telling of what happened. But as I tell you, history is his story. It's always told by the victor. So did they embellish any of the details? Maybe. Who knows? However, the story that we're going with is that, knowing what was at stake, Rosa didn't get into a shouting match. She didn't try to physically struggle. She calmly and quietly, but with immense courage, holds her ground and simply says, no. The power was in her stillness. No matter what awful things the bus driver shouted at her, and the names that he called her, and what he threatened her with, her stillness served as a strength. I will not be moved. Her refusal to be reactive and her intentionality makes her small act a world-changing beacon. What this episode proves is that characters like Rosa, like many other people who don't think that what they're doing makes a difference, shows that you have no idea how far your one small act of true strength can reach. And sometimes it's not about what you do, but what you bravely and strategically choose not to do. This is Rakai Steed, new from the Ville. Make sure that you share this with everyone. It deserves it. Share this with everyone. Make sure that you like this and leave me a comment by all means. What did you think of this particular episode? Whether this is your doctor or not, what did you think of the episode? And what did you think of the points that I had to make? And if for some reason you haven't subscribed yet, it's okay, because it's not too late. Hit the button, subscribe, and then watch all the other videos. Something may resonate with you. Remember, at the end of the day, it's all about this, but it's even better when you use this.